2 hours, 1 minute, and 17 seconds. A marathon finishing time equivalent to 4 minutes and 37 seconds per mile, or 2 minutes and 52 seconds per kilometer. What exactly does this finishing time mean in reference to the marathon? Well, if we take a look at the top 10 fastest marathon times in history, you'll know that this is a very, very quick time, but it's actually not an official performance from any athlete. And that's because, believe it or not, this is the average finishing time, the average finish of Kelvin Kiptum in every single marathon where he's competed. For the Valencia Marathon in 2022, to the London Marathon in the spring of 2023, to his most recent installment of the 2023 Chicago Marathon on October 8th, Kiptum has absolutely obliterated every single expectation over the 26.2-mile distance, leaving the world in complete shock over his distance running exploits. With such surreal consistency and seemingly endless possibilities over this distance, Kiptum's rise has left many people asking, how exactly did he get here, and what made this new world record actually possible at this year's Chicago Marathon? Was it the shoes? Was it some special racing tactic that finally allowed Kipchoge's previous world record to fall? Or was it something else, such as improved training, ideal pacing, or possibly a special Kenyan diet that finally allowed these times to actually occur? Now, there's no specific key to exactly what made this sub 2 hour and 1 minute performance actually go down, but after months and months of searching, information has finally come out as to exactly how Kelvin Kiptum has been recently training, and even against the likes of Eliud Kipchoge and his historic marathon preparations, Kiptum's training takes marathon preparations to the next level. Here's a recent example as to what Eliud Kipchoge's training has looked like for his marathon preparation for his build-up to this year's Berlin Marathon. In total, he was running around 120 miles each week. He completed 1 track session, he runs 1 long run every week, totaling close to 40 kilometers, and he completes 1 threshold session, usually on the weekends. Now, we have reviewed this training many times in the past, and it is some very impressive running, and it's allowed Kipchoge to reach the very top of the marathon world for close to a decade now. But Kiptum's training really takes endurance running to another dimension. Here's an example of what Kelvin Kiptum's training has looked like for the previous year or so. Now, compared to Kipchoge, Kiptum runs many more miles every week, often reaching a total of close to 300 kilometers for a 7-day cycle, or right around 180 miles. On Mondays, he'll start with a casual 25 to 28 kilometer run in the morning, followed by a 12 kilometer jog in the afternoon. On Tuesdays, he'll jump into a pretty fast track session in the morning, alternating between slow and fast paces for around 1 hour. Then he'll follow this by another 12 kilometer jog in the afternoon. On Wednesdays, he'll repeat the same kind of running that he did on Monday, totaling close to 40 kilometers. On Thursday, he'll run between 30 and 40 kilometers once again, this time close to marathon pace, so we're looking at about 18 to 24 miles at a pace well under 5 minutes per mile, I would imagine. On Friday, he'll again repeat the Monday and Wednesday running. On Saturday, he'll repeat the relatively quick track session, followed by another easy jog in the afternoon. And then, finally on Sundays, he runs yet another very quick run, anywhere from 30 up to 40 kilometers, again pretty close to marathon pace, which for Kelvin Kiptum is faster than most people could run this distance at the very peak of their training. Altogether, this type of running is very, very intense compared to most athletes around the world, and it is important to mention that this kind of preparation is close to the maximum intensity that he will reach for a full week of training during any point of the year. Now, much of this information came out after this year's Chicago Marathon, where the world was hyper-focused on figuring out exactly how Kiptum achieved the impossible. And according to his coach, he said that there is no weekly rest. In fact, he said specifically, "We rest when he gets tired. If for an entire month he doesn't show signs of fatigue or pain, we simply continue." He also stated that he only runs, eats, and sleeps. "There's a small group that gathers around him, but I only take care of him. The others have a right to follow him. During difficult sessions, he is completely alone, and that's where he goes the fastest." It's not a surprise at all that Kiptum often finds himself completely alone in training, especially when he's reaching the most intense running that he will do. And another very interesting thing that many have found to be not surprising at all is what his coach said about his historic running. After reviewing running this pretty intense weekly calendar. His coach also said that he is in his best years right now, but at one point, I'm afraid that he'll get injured. At this rate, he does risk breaking, so I suggest that he lower the pace, but he does not want to at all. He talks to me about the world record people all the time. I told him that in 5 years, he might be done, that he must calm down to last in athletics. Now, the athlete-coach balance can be a very difficult thing to achieve, because finding longevity in the sport of athletics does require patience and understanding. But despite going against the grain and jumping into extremely difficult running in his early 20s, Kiptum has somehow maintained a spotless record in the marathon, even against some of the best athletes to ever run over this distance. Now, there are many, many more variations to Kiptum's running that haven't hit the broader landscapes of the internet yet, but just by looking at this one 300-kilometer week, it really does look like the type of legendary running that would be required to break a world record, especially such an esteemed world record, such as Kipchoge's previous mark of 2 hours, 1 minute, and 9 seconds. Now, the bulk of Kiptum's training takes place in Chepkorio, Kenya, which is positioned right around 2,500 meters above sea level. Like many other elite training groups, this high-elevation running demands much more in terms of oxygen consumption, because compared to sea level running, the amount of oxygen in the air is significantly less. With continued training in a location such as this, Kiptum's overall strength has gotten to historic levels, and it's not exclusively because of the elevation. It's because this area is full of hills and dirt roads, which many believe to be the cornerstone to stronger running. This intense training is certainly a huge part as to what made this world record possible, but it's also important to review and analyze the other factors that certainly made this world record a possibility as well. Of course, there's the shoes, which do in fact make a difference compared to footwear that we saw even a few years ago, let alone marathon performances that took place over a decade in the past. Also, there was very good pacing in this race, which saw Kiptum go through halfway in 1 hour and 48 seconds. There was also Kiptum's insane negative split, which saw him throw down a second half of 59 minutes and 47 seconds. And then there was the obviously good marathon conditions, which saw favorable temperatures, an overcast sky, no chance of rain, and fairly minimal winds at the end of the day. When we do in fact review every single part of this race that made this world record possible, it's undeniable that every aspect played a little bit of a role in breaking Eliud Kipchoge's world record. But when we take a closer look at what his training has looked like for the previous year, I think it's pretty safe to say that his training was a huge part of what made this world record possible. Combined with his insane 300 kilometers per week, his very intense track sessions, and his amazing ability not to get injured, Kelvin Kiptum has really showcased that he might be the next great one, and at this pace, he just might be the greatest marathoner on the planet. Kelvin Kiptum has absolutely taken the marathon world by storm, and at this point, I think it's only a matter of time before he breaks the 2-hour barrier. But when will it happen, and just how fast will he go? Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, until next time.